everyone for joining. We're super excited to be here this morning. Hope everyone is having a great start to the App Promotion Summit. My name is Megan Patrolak, EMEA Sales Director at OneSignal, and I have with me Claudio Benedictor, who's our Solutions Engineer as well. So a few people more filtering in, but we'll go ahead and get started. So looking forward to talking a little bit about the importance of customer onboarding. So today, essentially, we'll talk about why should we think about investing in the onboarding journey for users that are downloading the app for the first time? What does that onboarding journey look like, and how can you make it as successful as possible? We'll talk about a few things to consider during that initial onboarding journey. So what are the critical things to consider when you're thinking about individual touch points? How do you engage customers during onboarding? And then last, we'll jump into the OneSignal dashboard and show you a little bit about how we think about journeys and how we've seen customers have success with onboarding as well.
Okay, I'll start us off with the agenda on the first part and why investing in onboarding. So first, when we think about onboarding here, we look at it through the lens of what messages will you be sending to your users or your customers once they've downloaded the app, when will you send them, what will you send them, what that sequence is. So in that context of the onboarding, there's a few very important things to consider. First is that already 1 in 5 of users who have just downloaded the app or after a single interaction will never return to it. So essentially, all the app downloads you only get in retain or have 80% or more open it for more than twice. Second is that there's a 60% chance a user will never return to your app after within the 7 days. So there's already, you can see there's already a big tail cliff from when customers download the app to them leaving after the first 7 days or having only one or a couple of sessions. There's a lot of importance, and that just lends to the fact that the first 7 days or the first session itself is really important in making sure that they have repetitive sessions. Therefore, an onboarding journey, as we're going to demonstrate that, and how to achieve it will be very important. Another factor that's also driving, again, the importance of why to invest in onboarding, so are the market forces, especially by major platform like Apple. I said, with Apple's own tracking transparency framework, they've made it more difficult to essentially acquire or to bring in new users, given the shift that we have to more privacy-minded consumers. So these, in a nutshell, the 3 really compelling reasons as to why to invest obviously in onboarding. Main thing you take away here is within the first 7 days, very critical, ensuring that you have repetitive sessions on your users, but also to be cognizant or aware of what major platforms or the market forces are doing in terms of making it more difficult for you to even acquire new users for you to download the application for the first time. So that's setting the stage. The next question to ask yourself is, okay, I understand this. How do I know that my app, for instance, needs a good or solid onboarding process? So here's 5 telltale signs that you need to look out for. If you fall into one of these categories, I suppose, then definitely be aware of the kind of onboarding experience that you give. So first, it's an application where the users who have downloaded it, they must provide key information in order for you to deliver your product and service. It's of course important because you need to ensure that the users who have downloaded the app are taking successive actions. Really, as just mentioned, within the context of seeing a lot of churn in the first week or in the first session of people just downloading the app and leaving it, you have sort of competitive things working against you in terms of ensuring that users do provide information. The second bit here is the content personalization is part of your app's core value proposition. So here, essentially, how you communicate to users is differentiated from other apps through its use of personalization. That lends itself again to the first point. You need to capture information from users, and then second, you need to put that into action of how you communicate. Another telltale sign is point number 3 is when your app is reliant on explicit permission, and that's especially on iOS or Apple devices in that sense. For instance, where you need to capture consent to track location permissions, or when notifications or in-app, not in-app, but mobile push notifications are important again for you to deliver your services. Like you need to send out notifications that your order has been received or that is on its way. you need to get permissions in that sense. The fourth and fifth, quite similar to one another, is in that your app uses unique interactions. Again, how do you set yourself apart from your competition and the interactions that you have? The more unique you are, the more obviously information that you need to get from your users, and therefore and you need to obviously build up a profile. You need to make sure that the users are coming back repetitively. There's lots of data points that you are looking to, of course, collect from your user in order for you to send or personalize the interactions that you have. And the fifth here is that your app is part of an emerging category. Now, obviously, in the last 10 years, even going back further, you've seen the emergence of lots of different types or industries of apps that are going out there. Between being able to, of course, play games, to being able to order things, or booking your cab, and many other sort of niche things that the app is doing. If your app, in that sense, is doing something totally new, or something that's not widely accepted, like, oh, I'm downloading an app just to play a game, for instance. There's a learning element required from your application for your users because they're not used to this type of proposition that you have. And in that sense, it's very important that your message is being relayed, especially again in the first 7 days, convincingly to your users. I'll pause there.
Now we'll talk about some critical things to consider during the onboarding journey. So this is an example of a healthcare or a health fitness company that we have partnered with. And initially when they were acquiring new users, they really wanted to strategically think about how to keep those users engaged and completing multiple workouts to ultimately purchase a subscription. So we worked with the Better Me team to kind of set up specific milestones, after someone completed their first workout, to maybe ask for more information or to reward that user by sending them some sort of offer, maybe promotional notification, and then ultimately have them complete specific steps ultimately until they completed whatever challenge or kind of end goal we were trying to drive them towards. So when you're thinking about, how are you creating an onboarding journey, really define the success. What does the success of that onboarding experience look like? Does that person provide key information? Does that person fill out information about, maybe it's a fintech app? Do they fill out banking details? Maybe it's a hospitality app. Do they set specific preferences? Really define what these success points are, implement them into the app, and then create a messaging journey to make sure that people are completing those specific actions. Ask for essential permissions early. So this is something that we've seen kind of controversial. We actually get this question all of the time. Is it too early to ask for permission as soon as someone launches the app? When should I be doing this? There's no right answer. I think it really depends on the type of experience and the type of onboarding flow that you're creating for that user. I think the most important thing is to just inform users as to why they are opting into notifications. What are they opting into? Are they opting into 1 or 2 notifications per week, or are they opting into, relevant information about transactional notifications, or is it, like behavioral or e-commerce focused? So really having something that's a clear value proposition of this is why you should enable locations. In this instance, it's a ski app, so enable locations so you can find your friends on the mountain, kind of a fun way to enable location services, but also can be really relevant as well. So e-commerce, maybe find stores in your area, enable locations for that to make the consumer's life easier. But I think just being really clear about that value proposition during the initial onboarding journey is where you'll see the most success and ultimately gain the most opt-ins and most success in an onboarding journey. Consider a carousel. So this is something we've seen, some companies really implement successfully. Many have done it natively into the app, and many use OneSignal to do this as well. So in this instance, creating a carousel that has multiple slides or multiple screens that actually explains what's happening in the app. Maybe you've rolled out new functionality that you want to highlight to existing users, or maybe you want to make your experience really clear for someone who's downloaded the app for the first time. Considering a carousel where someone can easily swipe through and kind of learn a little bit more about the app before getting started makes it for a really successful onboarding journey. Just think about any sort of like fintech or e-com app that you may be using, understanding how to add things to your cart or understanding what steps you may need to take to complete your first transaction are super key to ensuring that person ultimately is onboarded successfully. And then lastly, we like to think about this from an omni-channel approach. So we do see that when consumers are engaged across multiple channels like push, email, SMS, at different stages in their journey, they actually have a much higher completion rate of that initial onboarding experience and ultimately make it to that first success point, whether it's a first checkout or a first transaction or a first message to a friend, whatever it is. Thinking across multiple channels has been really successful. We've actually seen a rise in email recently. I think email's always been successful, but it's even more successful when you're combining it with push notifications and email, just in a contextually relevant way. So maybe there's certain things that you would send via email, more long form, but maybe a notification could be more instantaneous about something immediately happening in that user's account. So this is actually what we'll launch into a little bit, just thinking about ways that you can build this out and show how customers at OneSignal have done this successfully.
Okay, so I'll get out of presentation mode and do a little bit of a live demonstrations for you. So the main theme that I would like to convey from here is one that is our platform. OneSignal in that sense is very easy for you to use and to get started. One. And then two things I want to talk about is a couple of different approaches on creating an onboarding journey. So let's get going. Just briefly going to skip here over to my demonstration environment. Appreciate a lot of you would not have seen this for the first time. So just a little bit of where we are. I've got my own sort of application at the moment. I've given it my own, obviously, recognizable name. On the top is my menu bar. At the moment, I'm finding myself within journeys. Of course, there's other things that we, of course, support, like creating messages across different channels, managing your audience, and obviously looking at the analytics of delivery. And top right of the application is where I would see sort of my own profile and being able to find the right documentation on any topics I would like more information on. That aside, let's start with the first thing, the ease of use of the platform here. We're in the journey builder right now. It's very easy to obviously zoom in and out, of course, for you to look at the journey at a very small sort of a nodes by nodes level, or to, again, zoom out, look at the entire journey itself. This is a very simple one that I've got going. So in order for you to get started, you look at the entrance criteria. So this is sort of the top of the funnel. And here on the right-hand side, within a few number of clicks, I can already dictate who participates into the journey, when should they participate in there, what other accompanying rules would I like to have. As we're speaking specifically about onboarding, this should be quite straightforward. In this context, it is, let's say, I want to target users who have now made their first purchase. Through that, again, the exit rules, because it's onboarding, obviously you want to make sure they go through an entire journey, but across other use cases, it can be very relevant, of course, that you have users exit the journey as soon as an action has been completed, like have they made their second purchase? Or further to the point before, have they completed their profile? If they've completed it, exit off the journey and then bring them into another journey so that you don't over-message. And all this can be done through the click of a button in that sense. So the interface is here on the right-hand side. As I go through, I've already put in the main settings, the main context in which I'll be launching the users in the journey through. So again, through the ease of use, if I were to click any of the buttons here, I can progress the journey. Right now it's very simple. I've made my first purchase, so I'm part of the journey. I'm going to be sending you a welcome message. So here's a push notification in that sense. Very easy for me to choose between the templates that I've created in here. I can change it at any time, of course. And again, for me to be helpful, I've got sort of a preview right here of what the message looks like. One particular advantage that you're going to have with OneSignal is that you need to create only one message to target across the major platforms. Android and iOS work very differently, have very different requirements, but you can bundle them into one sort of notification designer. And again, just for me to be helpful, what does the message look like for the user? I got that right here. Then I got a wait note. So again, further to the first part of what I would like to show you is how is this easy to use. Just through a click of a button, I can continue this here. For instance, I'm going to send up another notification. In that instance, I've welcomed you. Say, well, thank you for downloading. We would love to have you in the app. then I wait a little bit, and then I would like to prod them to start taking some action here. In that instance, completing profile or capturing information, again, is very powerful. So here I have created sort of a notification in here. As you can see, this is my preview. What I'm using right here already from the get-go is some sort of personalization. If I've already captured a first name on sign up, I could use this to say, hello John, thanks for downloading. To get going, please complete a profile. And yeah, within that, let's just save this. Click of the button, I've got that added in here. And again, if I continue forward in here, so lots of other things that I could do, such as branching as well here. So based on, let's say, message behavior, have I clicked the button, so have I clicked the notification or not, I can take you through a different path. That's the ease of use of the platform. So first and foremost, the second point here, the type of different journeys on onboarding, they can be quite linear as well. So if we zoom out of this, that is a quite linear flow at the moment, right? I get in, receive a notification, wait, and then I receive another notification. I'm taking you through the steps or the milestones, as Megan has earlier said. If they're completed, I can progress you. Very linear, very simple, and yet very effective. The second type of journey that can, of course, also be supported will be a little bit more complex. Okay. So it's, again, high-level view here. I can zoom in, of course. Just wanted to give you a full picture how you can see the different branching in here. There's a lot happening at the moment, so I'll just break it down very briefly for you. This being one of the more sort of advanced onboarding journeys, let's look at it from the industry of finance, or a typical onboarding finance journey, where I say, okay, the entrance criteria is I've downloaded the app, I've opened it for the first time, and I send the first notification, well, welcome, thank you for downloading. But what I want to do in this journey here, because of being in finance, one of the important things for me is that you, as a new download user, verify your identity. Let's say, in this fictitious scenario, this is very important for me. If you don't verify your identity, I cannot do anything for you. I cannot facilitate your payments. I cannot facilitate any transfers or any purchases. So that's ultimately what I need to drive at. Of course, we can replicate this across different industries. What else is obviously important when you're in the gaming, in the e-commerce sectors? What is the main thing that you need to ensure once your users have downloaded? What actions do you need them to take? And I've baked it in here in this onboarding flow. So, send the first message, welcome. At that point, what I'll just be doing in the background is I'm just doing a simple check. Have you verified your identity, yes or no? If you have, perfect, we'll progress. But if you haven't, this is where we can get a little bit more built up and a little bit more pushing along and ensuring that you get across that finish line. I'll send you another message. Can you please verify your identity so in order to get started? Again, give some time, wait. If I'm in the journey in here or if it's live, I can, of course, come back in here and make any changes. This is also very important to highlight. Like, is waiting 3 hours too little? Should I make it maybe a day? Very easy for me to make any changes on the go here, of course. At that point, I have another check. Have you now verified your identity? So you can see I've done a couple of things in here. If you have, perfect. I'll bring you through to the next stage. And if you haven't, you know what? I'm going to try a different notification. And this is where it really comes down to you and your creativity, how you want to communicate in here. In this example, I've already sent you reminders asking, go and verify your identity. Now that you still haven't done it, I'm just going to send a notification along the lines of, hey, it only takes 2 minutes to verify. Guys, this is really simple. Slightly different message. Really want you to get over that line. As you can continue seeing here, I can wait further, see if you still verified the identity. If you still haven't done that, then you know what? I can tag you, if you will, and to flow you out of the journey. So I have made some sort of identification. I can say that this user is really inactive. Like they've downloaded my applications, had a session or two, but still within the first 7 days, they still haven't verified their identity. Let's identify that, put that on the side, and work out a different messaging strategy or a different journey. So just to recap on this as I'm zooming out, I hope this is quite visible for you here on the stage. As you can see, there's a funnel, but there's lots of different gates to take my customers through. Of course, towards the completion of this journey, great, my users have verified identity. It could be the end of the journey, or it could be, I need another milestone now. Because it's, let's say, the first 7 days. The second milestone for me is, have you added a payment method in this context? It's very simple for me to create new rules, as we've demonstrated here earlier, and to take them down different notification strategies. So that was the heart of the demonstration, essentially. So the 3 things I'd like you to take away with is, I hope I've conveyed that. If I haven't, I've done a bad job. It's easy for you to use or for you to get set up. Okay, this is again all draft, but once you put it in live, you can actually see the type of users that go through that. The second thing I wanted to again convey here is that journeys can come either quite linear and quite straightforward and simple, yet effective, simplifying, or of course you can make the journeys a little bit more gated or have a bit more checks and balances to make sure that the actions that you're looking for users to take are happening. Do we move on to questions now?
We can, yeah, sure. Any questions that anyone has or anything? Yes?
How do you apply this to an app builder? Like, is this something that you're, like, for example, if you're designing it like this, which looks great, and it has a set live in the top right, is that something that you can, if you've got this within your app stack or whatever, maybe it's a plugin or whatever, or SDK, you set live, it can, like, on the fly change the onboarding flow that quickly without having to, like, move stuff around in the actual app code, which is currently the situation for our app.
Oh, well, once our SDK is installed, then that's it. Then your coding is done with. Again, depending on the channels that you have put in here, out of the box, you'll get your mobile push or web push and in-app messages already. If you want to add in emails, just have these set up. But once you've done that, the components are here. When you make changes, you do not need to go back to your app developers and say, hey, I wanted to change my journey. No, you manage this here through the dashboard. You can pause the journeys if you want to, make some changes to it, and then resume them.
Can you A/B test this as well?
A/B testing is something that we are going to roll out for the journeys very soon. Please.
Yeah.
So where I work, we have already a CRM platform that sends out all of the notifications, push, email, SMS, etc. That all goes via there. Does this integrate with CRM platforms, or do you send out things directly from this?
Yeah, so the way that we think about it is that all of the logic is driven by both segmentation and tagging. So if you have an existing CRM today that stores a lot of information about your customers, what you can do is pass, the pertinent information into OneSignal via those tags and know exactly who those users are and which attributes apply to them. You can then essentially build the logic in OneSignal. So it wouldn't be like an API where you would send the information from your CRM and just do it programmatically. You would use the OneSignal UI. But you could pass like the personalization information about those users and create a customized journey for them. Does that answer your question?
It does. I just think it poses a challenge for it as an organisation with the one that I work with. They have we've said we're going to have one single source of communication with customers. So we did have multiple sources. We were using various different things for various different types of notifications and communications, and as an organisation we've said now actually no, everything has to go out of the CRM. So I was just interested to know, like, as a strategy for a business, this would be that actually communications would go out of OneSignal as opposed to the agreed CRM. So I'm just in my mind thinking how you could sell that to an organisation who's taken that stance.
Well, I suppose underneath your CRM in itself, the different channels that you communicate in, they ought to be or could be facilitated by different platforms or by different softwares. Mobile push or email can be two different providers, or so could SMS. We can bring these in here under all OneSignal. So we're essentially a notification engine. We'll send it for you across different channels. We can plug into your CRM, so you can make sure that the cohort, the segments you can create in the CRM, come to us, and then we activate them to go through the communications that you've set in OneSignal.
What CRMs are you integrated with?
We're integrated with pretty much. Well, we can integrate with all CRMs. We've got a major integration with Zapier that allows us to capture information from CRM systems straight away. We recently launched Adobe Audience Manager integration, and now building out on Salesforce.
What about HubSpot?
HubSpot, again, we have an out-of-the-box integration for that too.
Cool. Any other questions?
Just in terms of the onboarding, do you have any data in terms of how, at what point is an onboarding experience too long? So I think if you've got login, then you've got switching on your push notifications, you might have some coaching, messaging. How do you see that broken down? So would you do login and the push, and then would you then let the user into the app and then pick up on onboarding, like say, a little bit more piecemeal, or I don't know if you've, through working with various companies, whether you've managed to find the optimum onboarding experience. I suppose it depends on application. But
I think you really want to find the path of least resistance. I know that sounds really simple, but I think it sometimes is as simple as that. What are the core actions that person needs to do to be able to use your app? Like, do they have to provide an email? If so, that's the first block. Do they have to provide a credit card? If so, second block. And then if that person does drop off during those key periods, you can send a message to remind them to come back to that key period. We see onboarding journeys anywhere from like 5 to 10 steps usually. Anything longer than that, the person's probably churned. Maybe try to re-engage them in a couple of months, but just expect that there will be some drop off. The nice thing too is you can actually see in the journey builder how many people react to a message or kind of the analytics on that. So if you see one message is particularly really successful, maybe you can try to like replicate that same tone in further messages. Or if you see one message is just not performing at all, you can easily change it. So I think it's kind of this dynamic kind of learn as you go. Start with a strategy. Okay, what are the core things this person needs to do to find that success, and then align the messaging journey accordingly.
And is the reporting within the suite, or do you plug into external reporting?
Both.
Both, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
On here, I can see the figures as I go through. Obviously, the nodes in here. I don't have, so I have a demonstration environment, so no obviously real data. But you can picture that there would be figures along each node to say how many have now clicked on the notifications, how many are waiting, and you can see the whole funnel. And of course, we very easily integrate and encourage the data that we're essentially collecting for you to be brought into an analytics provider of your choice.
One in the back.
In terms of permissions, is that created as well by just in-app notifications, like carousel, or that all goes into this flow as well? It's not like different.
Yes, exactly. That can all be incorporated into the flow. So there's a separate part of the dashboard where you can go and create all of your in-app messaging templates. In-app messaging is actually quite interesting because if you do ask for permissions upon someone opening the app or downloading the app for the first time, if you do have a tool like this, you can actually re-prompt them at a later date if you do see that person is really active but maybe opted out of notifications to begin with. So you can actually re-prompt them, have them go into their settings or link into their settings, they opt in, and then that user is then kind of reacquired in that sense.
Yep. Just to reiterate, that is applicable for all, of course, the iOS users. Android users of yours are by default opted in to receive notifications. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. It's just interesting that I didn't know that was good. Yes, enough.
Cool.
Sorry, that question.
So in terms of saying in-app messaging, do you have like dynamic swaps and things like instead of carousel, something where it's just a dynamic field within the app where you can push and it fits with these flows as well?
Yeah, do you want to pull up an app? Yeah, we can show it very quickly too if that's helpful, but tons of different options with an app messaging if that's something that you're considering incorporating. The carousel is interesting. Essentially, you can build out different screens, customize them all, and then wherever someone's clicking on an individual screen, you can actually track all of that data. So say someone clicks on something in that initial onboarding flow, you can get the data that says, okay, this person clicked on this action, and you can deep link into it as well. So this is an example. Do you want to go through this?
Well, what would you like to?
I think this is just an example of a news app that has kind of become a subscriber. Some different options there, but really easy to personalize it.
I'd be a little bit separate to kind of like a pop-up essentially within the app. I mean, more in the sense of like if the customer's exploring within, there's like almost like slots within the app.
Yes.
You kind of have dynamic information to kind of do the same prompting but less in your face, kind of is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so there's of course there will be the triggering rules in here, again, when certain conditions are satisfied. So if I'm looking at a particular page, or if I have done a number of clicks on anywhere within your app, that can trigger a message or a notification. The amount of space it takes up on your screen, you can customize in here. This at the moment is an example of a full message, so it takes up the entire screen, but of course you can make that much smaller, or be more subtle, have it show up at the bottom of the screen or top of the screen. Is that helpful?
Cool. What other questions do you have? No? Did you have one?
Go for it.
Just wanted to know from your guys' experience how effective like having basically being able to retarget them with push notifications before they've signed up. So like for example for our app, you have to sign up before you can use any of the functionality. So you have intro screens, then you need to sign up, then you get prompted for permissions that are related to our app. We've talked about potentially trying the push notification one right up front so that we can retarget those people who may say, oh, I've got a great account, I'm going to do that now, and disappear. Is that normally something that you see the trade-off between people less likely to opt into notifications because they get prompted about it very early versus the ability to contact those people who have dropped off at the registration wall to bring them back to the app? Like, do you see any kind of pattern on there, what preferred behavior?
Yeah, I think it's a question of like quality over quantity sometimes. If the first screen on your app is to opt into notifications, most people will probably say yes or no fairly quickly. So you could end up with a higher volume of people that are actually interested in like converting to your product ultimately. We worked with a language app who actually had their notifications pretty deep in the funnel because basically their hypothesis was, you know, if people aren't interested in opting into notifications, then maybe they're not interested in actually using our product and they just downloaded it. So that was one instance, but we do see people implement it relatively early in the onboarding cycle so that you can capture as many people as possible. It really depends. I think if you have a strong use case for implementing it as the first screen, then great. If not, maybe the second or third kind of stage is usually where it fits best. Cool.
Any other questions?
No? Right. I think we're at time. I don't think, yeah.
Thank you for attending.
Thanks, everyone.